What's up, hockey fans? Welcome back to the PostHuggersPodcast. Steve, how are we doing today?
I'm doing all right. Just made it through another Father's Day. Was a bit of a busy one. I made an absolute mess of the house. I will never be a professional contractor, but I can hang in there a little bit. How was yours, bud?
Doing good. Just hang out with the dad. Did stuff around the house and got a workout in the morning. So it was nice to be back in Vegas and stuff like that. But Steve, who do we have in the blue paint today?
We got an awesome guest today, another Tendy. So get ready for Tendy Rage today, everybody. We got Erris from Blueland Erris podcast, representing the Atlanta Thrashers always. Welcome, Erris.
Thank you guys for having me on the podcast. Super excited to be on today.
Of course, dude. We're really excited to have you on, and we're really excited to talk about some expansion cities and also the Atlanta Thrashers and kind of what got you into the Atlanta Thrashers. So let's start there. What got you into the Atlanta Thrashers, being a fan of them? Obviously, they're no longer a team, but what got you into that, and what got you into the hockey realm?
Excellent story. I actually share a birth month with my favorite franchise in sports history, the Atlanta Thrashers. So people will ask me, do you remember when the Thrashers came to Atlanta? I don't. I was still in my mother's womb at that time, but a few days later, I was born around when the Thrashers debuted in Atlanta. And, growing up supporting Atlanta sports, all except one team, the Falcons. Sorry, Falcons fans who are watching this, but the Hawks, the Braves, eventually united many years later. The Thrashers were right there in my backyard and loved them growing up. Turning to Fox Sports South, the nostalgia is already just hitting me again. It was always easy access. I spent a lot of time in Phillips Arena where the Hawks split time with them, and I got to see a number of games growing up with the Thrashers. They just captivated me. I loved sports growing up, still love them today. That's how I've been able to earn a living today, is covering sports. I've just always wanted to do that. Grew up an athlete as well, and just loving the Thrashers even after they relocated. Was playing AA hockey around the country. A couple AAA merger tournaments with the Atlanta Phoenix. I got it on the wall. You guys can't see that, but with the Atlanta Phoenix, who were formerly the Junior Thrashers travel program. So just growing up, the Thrashers were really always a part of my life. Always loved them. Huge fan. I would say through the ups and downs, but for the downs, just the downs, just quite literally just the downs, but looking for some ups in the future. So and just the game of hockey as a whole just means absolutely everything to me. Absolutely saved my life.
So Erris, you're another Tendy. So when you started playing, who did you model your game after? Like, who did you look up to?
So my favorite goaltender of all time, my dad took a business trip to Vancouver, and it was around the time of the Winter Olympics too. And he brought me back a goalie mini stick, and it was signed by Roberto Luongo. And that was when I really started to watch Roberto Luongo, and that is my favorite goaltender of all time. And we will talk about the Florida Panthers, I imagine, considering the time on here, and how he may not have got a ring on the ice, but he will be a part of a championship organization nonetheless. I'm very happy for him. So Roberto Luongo is definitely at the top of the list, but there was a number of goalies. I was all things goalies growing up. It was everything to me. Obviously we got Tendies on the podcast today. Definitely stressed my parents out picking that position. It definitely stressed them out, especially my mother. I'm pretty sure my mother still gets PTSD of just not wanting to see goals go in on her son. But
knowing that guy was coming down one of the things with that big clapper, right? Knowing that you were about to get peppered by, a heavy shot too. Like I had my mom and dad a little bit worried every time that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Shield your eyes moment. But I mean, they got through it, and they were supportive of me all the way through, no matter where we were going. But in terms of goalies, I grew up watching, like I said, Luongo's at the top of the list. Loved Carey Price when I was a kid. I hate the injury troubles we've dealt with the last couple of years, but I loved Carey Price growing up. And man, there's a number of goalies, Pecorine, but there's a number. Lou's definitely at the top, though.
Rene I had the pleasure of meeting him. There's been a lot of, Finnish players that I've met. And, as far as being humble and down to earth and just talking to people, I found Finnish players the best, right? So Rene was awesome to talk with. He's always been one of my favorites. Saku Koivu was, phenomenal for that too. And I can keep going down. Like Solani was amazing to meet as well. So a lot of them just seem to be class acts and happy to be playing hockey and just talking with fans, where sometimes you don't quite get that from some of the other ones, but that's on another podcast.
Fair enough.
Yes.
So Erris, you've gone through what I am currently still going through right now. So I'll let podcasters know. So my first team is the Montreal Canadiens. And when my wife and I moved here in 2008, the Coyotes weren't viewed well in Canada at all. The Canadian media would really go after a lot of the expansion American teams, right? And one thing I will give Gary Bettman credit for was the expansion to what we would call non-traditional markets. And I don't like that term anymore. It's a great sport, so it should translate to any market now. And that's especially now that's survived in the desert, right? So we got down here and we didn't have favorable views of the teams. And I'll also say this: there was a time when Shane Doan, who is one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet in your life, was under criticism because it was said that he had chirped and said something bad towards a French Canadian referee. I believe now it was Curtis Joseph that said that, but we had this view of Doan, like, you're kind of a jerk because you were running your mouth and profiling a ref. And after you meet and talk to Doan, like, you could see Doan get worked up, and you didn't even hear the guy swear, right? So I was like, well, how would this guy have targeted the ref? And then I met him a bunch of times. Such a good guy, the type of guy that stops everything that's going on in life to focus on you when he's talking to you. You're the most important thing. So my daughters have met him several times. He's one of my oldest daughter's favorites. But going back to the Coyote situation, so once we got past that, like, we were here initially to watch for Gretzky and weren't taking the team seriously. And I think a talent like Gretzky just really couldn't coach that team. And then when they got Dave Tippett in, it flipped. They started playing better hockey, more organized hockey, and the team got better and was fun to watch. And then they had great outreach with the community, so we became close with the team. So the Coyotes became my wife and I's second team. And we started putting up with the garbage, right? And when we were here, the attendance wasn't great because they weren't winning. And that happens everywhere. I don't care where you are right now. San Jose is not going to be packed right now. Columbus is not going to be packed right now. One team you mentioned, the Florida Panthers, 5 years ago, they weren't packed, right? And even before that, like, I remember you could buy a lottery ticket and get into a game for free, right? Trying to keep the sports there.
Yes.
Right? So they weren't packed, but when the Coyotes were winning, it got packed. Now, the one thing living here is when, from 2008 to 2012, I didn't have a kid. So a Tuesday night or a Thursday night game, I had no problem driving all the way out to Glendale. When I say that to people, it's out there. It could be an hour to an hour and a half in traffic from where I lived. So getting there was a hassle. And then coming home, I was youngish at the time, in my 30s. So it wasn't too bad getting home at about 11:30 at night and then getting up in the morning. Introducing kids to that afterwards, though, was a big problem because there's no way I could keep a baby up. And my oldest, unfortunately, would not sleep in the car until we were 1 minute away from the house. Then she'd fall asleep and have a wailing fit. So that didn't go over too well. But the Coyotes as a franchise, never really had a stable owner. For people that want to say there's no fans out, because one of the biggest things that makes me sick, and the Florida Panthers made a joke about it, our 6 fans that are out here. Hockey's huge out here. And look at the names that Arizona's produced. Matthew Nyes is pretty darn good hockey player. A guy, if you've never heard of him, Austin Matthews, he's not too bad. Oh my goodness, Joey, that went to go play for the Seattle Kraken.
I know him too, and I'm so mad.
Come on, I'm killing myself right here. Decord.
Goaltender. Decord.
Joey Decord.
Played for ASU.
Don't forget about Baby Doan.
And then we have Course, whose jersey I have on right now. So the whole move to Mullet Arena, when that happened, guys, like, I even went, oh, for Pete's sakes, come on. Couldn't we have done better? It hurt, right? And that arena was fun. It was a hell of a fun arena. It was some of the fastest ice in the NHL. but I got it. It was a small arena. But when it was packed, when Dome played and scored his 2 goals in his debut, I don't care. It sounded like it was 30,000 people packed in that arena.
Mm-hmm.
So my whole point about the Coyotes and when they were pulled away here, like, yeah, since 2008, since I moved here, I've been hearing that the Coyotes were moving every single year. Mm-hmm. And then fans all over the world, but mostly Canada, our East Coast Americans just crapping on the Coyotes. Now, to give it back a little bit too, Boston Bruins fans, your arena wasn't packed until you started getting good again. Your arena was not packed. So I'm sick of hearing that kind of crap. All right. Yeah. And I was there to witness it because I loved hearing people, during the playoffs, they couldn't sell the game. I was at every playoff game. They sold out. The place was packed with Coyotes fans. And the other thing, too, is that Arizona is a transplant city. So it takes a while to get local kids developed and then local fans. So it's not shocking that you would go to a game and see a bunch of other jerseys. Well, yeah, they're transplants. The transplants, when they're there, would go and support their team. I only cheered against the Coyotes twice a year. And at one point, it was only once a year because they were only playing once a year. But that's when they played the Coyotes. Or the Canadians, I should say. So when the Habs were playing them, sorry, Coyotes. I was always hoping for an overtime win for the Canadians. That's how I wanted it to end, right? And nobody getting injured, right? Nobody getting injured, play a good game, and that was that. But it still bothers me, all the smack and the crappy talk, about that where hockey belongs and doesn't belong, because this became a hockey community. It'll still be a hockey community.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Erris, I know you put up with your fair share of it. So enlighten fans as to what were the reasons that held the Thrashers back, and talk to us about the hockey market in Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. So it extends really beyond just hockey. I grew up born and raised in Atlanta. Only one in my family outside my younger cousins, but oh my goodness, the only one really born and raised in at least the Atlanta area, whether I was living downtown or in the metro. And the thing about growing up in Atlanta is there was a connotation and there was this idea that Atlanta was a bad sports city. The city that was chose to host the 96 Olympics has hosted a Super Bowl, Final Four, the only city that will next year host the college football playoff championship twice. NBA All-Star games, MLB All-Star game next summer as well, a World Cup venue, an NHL All-Star game. That was one of the highlights of my childhood. And we were dubbed a terrible sports city. And it was always funny to people down here because there was a period of Atlanta sports where like everybody was bad. And you alluded to that, when attendance will go down regardless. And I will circle back to that. But it goes even beyond hockey, where Atlanta got that connotation that just kind of that marred image around us. That was really unfair, especially, you look at each team and you give a breakdown of each league. And well, I'm looking at my team beating your team in attendance, and you're telling me we're a bad sports city. In the case of the Atlanta Thrashers, they fell in that the most, but unlike the other franchises in Atlanta, the Falcons had been to the playoffs quite a few times. The Atlanta Hawks, the Dominique Wilkins era, when Dikembe Mutombo was down here blocking shots and finger wagging, like he had the Hawks franchise jumping. And the Hawks have had a very mediocre franchise, but they've made the playoffs. The Braves have a number of World Series. I can't even get into them, and I can't talk about Atlanta United because they're still technically the babies of the cities, although they have quite the trophy case in that time.
Yeah.
The thing about the Atlanta Thrashers is I don't think people truly understand this. The Atlanta Thrashers, as many times as I've illustrated this on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and doing my due diligence with my content, made the playoffs one time in 12 years. Now, I'm all for being a great fan, and I do not think when your team is bad, oh man, let me give up. I'm tired of this. Dude, they've been bad for 1-2 years. Like, come on, I need you to power through more than that. But I want to really illustrate this. There were children that were in kindergarten in 1999 when the Thrashers arrived in Atlanta and graduated the year they relocated. And the time from going from a kindergarten child to a college freshman saw one playoff appearance from the team that wore these jerseys. I know my logo's not in the screen, but you can imagine what jersey I'm wearing. By all accounts, that is unacceptable. What's even worse than that is people don't get the full scope of the story. People were passionate about hockey down here in Atlanta. When the Thrashers arrived, the attendance was excellent. I believe it was top 12 in the league. People were excited to get a team. I hear it from family, friends. I hear it from my parents around that time in 1999. People were excited, and for the first couple of years, they were excited. What killed their excitement was a number of things. A lack of success. You got to have some, level of success to keep people engaged, regardless of how great your team is. But in addition to that, it was the sale, and it was my least favorite sale in Atlanta sports history. And it was when Ted Turner sold them to the Atlanta Spirit Group, who set out from day one to, a lot of people who even know the story think they just tried to kill the Thrashers. The Atlanta Spirit Group tried to sell our NBA team too for a profit. We almost had the Seattle Seahawks and the Seattle Hawks because they almost went to Seattle, and a lot of people do not know that. But the Atlanta Spirit Group ran the Atlanta Thrashers franchise absolutely into the ground. You see this outcry to see these jerseys back in the city, to see the Atlanta Thrashers logo reignited. The brand was so embraced. But there's so many factors, from them being unpassionate to, basically, I tell people, it was like sticking their middle finger up at the city. And you got to think, in the 2000s, I don't really remember. This was grown-up stuff from someone who was in elementary school at the time, and just barely at that. But there was a recession in the 2000s, and a very bad one. But people were expected in this city for a team that had the lowest win percentage out of all qualifying franchises in the 2000s to pay parking, transportation, tickets to the game, merchandise, and concessions for an ownership group that flipped off the city, and for a team that, to say never won is an understatement. I can be pissed off at home for free. After 12 years, it was miserable. So people wonder, and even I could really even get into the Flames. That's before my parents' time, but I can even get into the Flames as well, and how I feel like Ted Cousins sold them off to recoup some of his business losses in real estate or whatever ventures he was in, and it was a quick buck. But and people will wonder why would the NHL like to come back to Atlanta for the third time? They showed they hated it. There's no fans down there. 6.3 million people in this metro area. That's more than South Florida, Tampa, everywhere else. So
you know, one of the biggest conversations that it's not even a conversation anymore. I just cut people off. And what they don't get is that it's television revenue that makes this league go.
Exactly.
Why did Bettman fight so hard to keep the Coyotes in Arizona? The population base of Phoenix. Now, going back to my Canadian brethren, so did it suck when the Winnipeg Jets originally lost their team? It did. I was a kid growing up, and like Heath alluded to you, I'm an old attendee. So I had to watch the Hartford Whalers move, right? I had to watch, the Winnipeg Jets move. We had to watch these teams that were ingrained with me. The Quebec Nordique was one that was just mind-blowing to me. Yeah. Because the Nordique versus the Canadiens battles was just fun. They were some ruthless, vicious games. So, but anytime you hear this argument, like, why are we expanding out this way? Television revenue. I don't know if people understand this or not, but Canadians watch a lot of hockey. So if you put a team back into Quebec, those people from Quebec are still watching hockey right now. They already are. They're watching their team that now plays in Colorado, right? The year after they moved, they won the cup with Patrick Roy, which, by the way, really pissed me off. And I didn't cheer for the Habs for 2 years, but that's a whole other story. But that's the reason behind this, And yeah, they would talk about gate and attendance stuffs, and that would always crack me up. So again, what people also forget during a recession, was the Canadian teams were in a lot of trouble during the Canadian recession when the Canadian dollar dropped to 42 cents on the US dollar. So it became a major issue. And this is one of the biggest reasons why we have revenue sharing now, because the smaller market teams, and that's putting Canada in there, were having a hard time surviving. So there was talk about the Edmonton Oilers, the Calgary Flames, the Vancouver Canucks, even the Montreal Canadiens, the most storied franchise in all of the NHL, were in financial trouble. Okay, so This is why we have revenue sharing. This is why we have the hard cap. It works because we have a very competitive league, right? It's very competitive. Now, going back to the Atlanta Thrashers, because when you have poor ownership, I saw it here in Arizona.
Oh, yes.
How many bad friggin' owners. We did better when we didn't have an owner. We made it to the conference finals without an owner. And we didn't have good scouts at the time. And the worst part about that is the next year we were supposed to get the NHL All-Star game. The Coyotes were going to go back, and I knew they were going to make a run again. Lockout. Coyotes start off slow. The last 2 months of the season, they were the hottest team in the NHL, and they missed out on the playoffs by one stinking point. It was the regular season that had the full 82 games. Coyotes were making the playoffs, and they were coming back with a vengeance because Shane Doan would have willed getting to that cup final. I don't care. He would have went through everybody, which I always bug Goldie about because my favorite game that I ever watched Doan in, there was two of them, where he got pissed. And one was retribution for the knee that was thrown in the conference finals the year before. Donor went after Brown and ragdolled him. And then little Mike Richards came in, and I watched Donor pick him up, shake him, and just toss him. And right away I went, I am never pissing Shane Doan off because he would flick me and I would be dead. My next favorite game for Shane Doan is after they traded Antoine Vermette to the Chicago Blackhawks, and he just beat the ever-living shit out of Getzlaf. My wife and I looked at each other and just saw this possessed anger in his face as he is just throwing them. And we just went, gosh, that's a scary son of a bitch out there right now. Like, if I was the whole Anaheim Ducks team, I would have been like, okay, stay away from Donor tonight. He's just going to kill somebody. And he was looking for it, right?
Yeah.
He was just looking for it. So I get that pain. And then the people that are mocking the team leaving, right? I don't get it, because if they pulled your franchise away from you,
they'd be unbearable. Oh my goodness, I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me, because it was the funniest thing were Jets fans that were poking fun at the Coyotes. You never shed a team in the first place.
Well, the Jets might have to move pretty soon too. I mean, that's something that they're talking about and have been for a few months now, and that's
because attendance is
low.
Sales are down because hockey is expensive.
Hockey is very expensive. And going back to the non-traditional hockey markets, living in Las Vegas, we were not supposed to succeed in any way, shape, or form with hockey here. There was not supposed to be this cup run in year one. There wasn't supposed to be this fan outs. You know, everyone was like, oh, the fans are all going to be tourists. That was the big thing that we were being told here in Vegas as kids growing up playing in hockey in Vegas. We were told they're all going to be tourists. Yeah, a lot of them are coming in to watch hockey, but it's just another show for them. And that's a thing. But the people who live here are so passionate about Vegas Knights hockey. It's insane. They're all old Kings, Ducks, and Sharks fans who have converted over, and the Kings fans who stayed Kings fans gave them shit every year. But I mean, non-traditional hockey market just can't be thrown around anymore. I mean, it can't, because Vegas was not supposed to be here. And now they're one of the most hot teams in the entire league.
And look at Nashville.
Yeah,
Nashville, the funnest hockey bars in all of the NHL. I haven't been there yet, but I've heard a ton about it.
Yeah,
they have dedicated fans that show up game in and game out.
Yeah,
right?
No, and you look at.
I don't want to hear about traditional and non-traditional anymore.
Yeah, no,
I'm with y'all.
Yeah, no, and I don't want to hear about that anymore, because it's so past that point. Let's grow the game of hockey. Let's stop looking at traditional markets. You look at traditional markets in Canada, those teams aren't really doing too much right now, right? So, I mean, you look at the teams that are non-traditional, those are some of the ones that are in the playoffs.
Right I'm going to argue with this one a bit.
The
playoffs, the Oilers are doing okay. And
I mean, I would say those are traditional, but I wouldn't say, the Habs are the most traditional hockey market there is, right? And they have
in Toronto, like they were the Canadians first, Leafs were next, right?
Yeah. But I mean, Toronto, we all know they haven't ever been to the third round of a playoff series ever in their history. So I'm not until they do that, I'm not giving them any credit. So,
which, by the way, we'll clarify that. So
yes.
I always love these big hockey fans, right? That don't understand how it works. So for everybody out there that's saying, well, the Leafs won cups, because I got in this debate with this dude.
There was 2 rounds when they won the cup.
That's why you throw
I've
the ice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've said that myself, and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to go at anyone, throw shade or anything. But I've had Leafs fans say that too. I had to say that to someone a couple weeks ago, and it's like, oh, we have this amount of cups. Oh, we did this, and it's like, sometimes I'll get because I have a number of people from Toronto who are like, yeah, the Thrashers were done wrong, and if they come back, I'm gonna be happy. So it's not. I don't want to paint everybody with a broad brush,
Oh,
broad
100%.
stroke. So, but there will be Leafs fans who are just like, oh, you guys don't deserve a team, you don't deserve this, and then it's funny to see them talk about their cups. Again, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Obviously, the most iconic person to ever come out of my city is one of the most iconic human beings to ever roam Earth, and it was Martin Luther King Jr. The last Toronto Maple Leafs Stanley Cup, Martin Luther King, the most famous person in my city's history, was still alive. That's how long ago it was that the Leafs had won. And if you say that, Leafs fans are upset. But I didn't make that up. Wikipedia is free. Google is free. He was alive the last time the Leafs won the cup. So I hear those things and I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with any of that. And I'm not gonna say it doesn't count, but have some perspective. It was off the heels of the Vietnam War, my guy. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I love Toronto fans who come and they're like, we've won the cup. I get that all the time, and you have to remind them. And some of them don't know. Some of them think they legitimately won 4 rounds to win the cup, and those are the ones me and Steve talk about that we. So I'm gonna razz this guy now. But it's like it's ridiculous. I mean, the non-traditional hockey markets are. I mean, Arizona. You got, ASU out there playing NCAA Division I college hockey. They also have an ACHA Division I team, Division II and Division III. They also have a women's team.
Not forget about Olympian
and I mean, you got right. I mean, you got so many great hockey stories coming out of Arizona. It's insane. So to move a team out of there is crazy. And this is going to take us to our next point of where we think teams should go in an expansion. We know that the NHL wants to expand by at least 4 to 6 teams in the next, by 2030. I know that is that's their ideal plan. So guys, I'm going to shoot it over to Steve here. What's your number one city you want to see a team back in that's not Arizona?
Well, I won't give you a number one. I'll give you the teams that I want to see, right?
Okay.
So you already said it's obviously Arizona. And when Arizona comes back, what a lot of people don't know, and this again goes to, just people who aren't, they're living in their own little bubble, right? Shane Doan was voted the most popular sports icon in Arizona back when Larry Fitzgerald, and Fitzgerald's another class act. He beat out Larry Fitzgerald. Now, from the Arizona Coyotes, whoever is going to be the ownership group, include Fitzgerald, include Doan, get star power behind that name, promoting the team.
100%.
Get a good, stable owner, get people that understand hockey. The same thing is going to be said for Atlanta. Get people that know hockey in there, and then get a good ownership group, because it's all about stable ownership group and people wanting to win. All right. About the other teams, there's got to be another one East and another one West, right? So I'd love to see Quebec come back. I've always said it. Now, did I resent every Nordiques fan that came here, wearing their Nordique jersey and saying that this team should move there? They could still kiss my ass, because how it felt. So kindly fuck off. But I do want to see them get a team back, right?
Yes.
Because it was such a great rivalry between the Montreal Canadiens and the Quebec Nordique. The Battle of Quebec was awesome. Now, the next team, it's going to be the same thing, because we're seeing stuff, and I'll refer to Wrexham, my favorite soccer team, and to my friends out in the UK, and especially my friends in Wales Football Club, my favorite football club. The star power of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney really helped them out, right? It 100%. Helped project that team. So having star power behind it. So this is why I would say give Kansas City a team, but make sure Mahomes is involved in it. And get Kelsey in there too, because Kelsey's a big name. Get those guys involved with an NHL team.
And both of them are hockey fans too. So it would,
that's what I mean.
Make
Kelsey's brothers played hockey.
Yep.
So I would have them in it. And then, there's the 4 teams. But the NHL could easily expand even more than that. But that's what I would say. But, I wouldn't take away from a team in Portland. That's another great location for a hockey team, right?
Yes.
That's another good spot, right? So those would be my top 4 because, yeah, I'd love to see that Atlanta Thrashers logo get back on the ice. Would love to see it. I still think that this is one of the nicest logos to ever come out in the NHL.
In sports history.
It's so cool,
Yes.
and to see them back on there, and if somebody said, hey, Hartford was getting a team, yeah, I'd be all in favor of bringing back the Whalers. I grew up with the Whalers.
Yeah.
Right. So what I love about Atlanta is they can, do the nod back jerseys too, to when they were the Flames. Right. So,
Yes.
So those are my picks. So we'll throw this on over to you, Erris. We'll leave Goldie for the last here. So where would you want to see teams expand to?
Hey, how's it going, hockey fans? The chase for the Stanley Cup continues, and the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is just as hot as it is on the ice. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boost, and so much more, don't miss out as the Stanley Cup playoffs wind down. Right now, the Edmonton Oilers are plus 110 to win the cup, and the Florida Panthers at a negative 130. And don't be like me and give your buddies good advice without betting, such as picking the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers to make the cup finals. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 to get 150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sports app now and use the code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get 150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after insurance. See dkng.co/ice for eligibility and deposit restrictions. Terms and responsibility gaming resources. Copy NHL 2024, all rights reserved.
So I love the expansion conversation. Obviously, everybody looks for me on TikTok and YouTube to have this conversation. And he's like, oh, we can't add new teams. We can't. We can. The NHL's in a different space than all the other 4 major sports leagues in this country. The NFL is not going to Edmonton and Winnipeg and really having success. The NBA isn't, the MLB, the MLS. The NHL did that in 7 Canadian markets where no one else could, but has 25 in the States. Your footprint is different, and you do have more space to grow after you set revenue, viewership, and I think attendance records in the league yet again. And you're telling me you can't add more? Oh, they can add more, and they will add more. I have a number of cities who are definitely up for it. Being here in Atlanta, I think after we were screwed out of 2 times, as corny as it is, and as much as I don't like people saying it, you want to talk about a third time being a charm. We've seen this before in sports. People think, what city gets a third try? The NBA went to Chicago twice before they got it right with the Bulls on the 3rd try. Yep. The NFL somehow screwed up in LA twice. And when I tell you guys I didn't know that until like 4 years, I swear, when my dad told me that the Raiders were in LA before, that the Raiders were in LA, I was like, you're lying. Obviously, I didn't get to see that. But 2 strikes in LA before the Rams went back from St. Louis. And this has happened in the MLB as well. Before the Nationals, the Expos, moved to DC, and that was the 3rd try for the MLB, and you saw success. To me, the NHL, this is your turn. You're not going to sit here and tell me in my city, where I've seen the Braves thrive, the Hawks, the Falcons, who are the heartbreakers of the city, Atlanta United in the MLS, which is the 5th out of the Big 5, and they've made themselves Big 5, but they had to get there. And where the WNBA didn't have to pick up their team and move, that the NHL cannot come to this market and have success. So if it's done right with great ownership, you get the celebrity culture down here. I don't think I need to tell you that every rapper from Lil Baby to Migos, 21 Savage, whoever, will be behind an Atlanta hockey team, that Tyler Perry or whoever else is an Atlanta personality will be behind it. It will thrive in the city like the other sports have as well. And if people don't believe that, we will show you in due time. And I'll laugh while we do it. For the other cities, obviously, we're going to have to go east and west, and I do believe that the NHL can go to 36, not all at once. They need to take their time with this, and I think they will. But I used to say this all the time when I was a little boy watching hockey. It is 2024. The NHL's never been in Houston, Texas. You're joking, right? You're actually joking when all the other leagues went there and had success. There's no excuse. I don't want to hear anything about, oh, well, the Stars fan base will be. There's 7 million people in the Dallas Metro. There's 7 million in the Houston Metro. Houston is hungry for hockey. I understand the arrows and everything. Call the team that. A revival today, get it in Tillman, Fertitta, whatever. You do it in Houston, it's going to thrive. The 100%. Battle of Texas, we saw that in the MLB last year, I think for the ALCS to get to the World Series of the Astros and the Rangers. Could you imagine that for the NHL? You're sitting on a gold mine. So Houston is one. I know a lot of hockey fans don't want to hear this. The Phoenix Suns did fine. The Arizona Coyotes did fine. The Diamondbacks just went to the World Series. The Mercury are out there in the WNBA. No. I saw the Coyotes in the Western Conference Final when I was a kid in the whiteout, and that building was jumping with Mike Smith in net. I think they played the Kings that year, did they not? That was a Kings miracle run.
Did. Yep.
Dustin Brown's infamous hit on their defenseman.
Indeed.
Change the scope. Well, actually, you know what? Change the scope of that. Let me just throw that out there. Was Rafi Torres' his suspension? Because Rafi Torres, at that time, he could hit, he could score. He was a menace on the ice.
You're bringing it back to my memory.
Rafi Torres was out of there. If you put Rafi Torres in that lineup, and that became that much harder of a series for the LA Kings to win, it would have been a lot tougher because Dustin Brown wouldn't have taken a run like he did because Torres would have ran him through the boards and made sure that he was a permanent decal on the boards, going forward. So, but anyway, I digress because goalie's going to love the chirp back and that. Keep going, Erris.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And just segueing into that. Yes. Go back to Arizona and find success. You cannot put unpassionate owner. Funny enough, Alex Morello attempted to buy the Atlanta Hawks in the early 2010s. Thank God that did not happen. Mm-hmm. But funny story that we all uncovered here around when the Coyotes were unfortunately being relocated. But yeah, the Coyotes brand and everything was excellent. You've seen the product of hockey from Arizona State to Austin Matthews, Matthew Nyes, Joey Decord. There is a hunger for hockey in the desert. So I don't want to hear, again, we were talking about the untraditional markets. I remember when Vegas came in the league, me and all my friends, when we would be at practice or if we are at tournaments elsewhere and the Golden Knights were just getting ready to come in the league, we were like, I personally said, just locker room talk. And I was like, not only will the NHL go to Vegas and have success, but all the other leagues will be like, damn, we should have been first. All the other leagues are looking like, damn it, we should have been first. I used to tell my dad when he was a little boy, I wish I could go get him upstairs and tell him to come down here. But I used to tell him all the time, how does Vegas not have a sports team? And I knew all the time growing up that whoever got in there first was going to have success. And the thing about it is I vividly remember when Vegas got that team and people were like, oh, it'll be tourist. It's Sin City. It's not going to work. There's no hockey fans there. It doesn't snow there, as if NHL games are not played indoors outside of the Winter Classic and Stadium Series.
What city had the first outdoor game?
Vegas, was it not?
Vegas.
I believe was Gretzky Caesars in that? I forget.
Yes, it was at the top of a parking garage in Caesar's Palace. Yeah.
Unreal. And still the game worked. And still the game worked then. So the idea that people thought it was going to go to Vegas and failed. And I was like, y'all really just don't get how sports business works, do you? Now the excuse is, after we were told there would be no one showing up at the games, that no one will be passionate about Golden Knights hockey, no one would care, no one would follow the sport. It's, oh, well, they're Bettman's golden child. Oh, well, they were handed everything. Oh, but I thought no one was going to show up to the games. So if no one cared about hockey out there, then that shouldn't be a problem. So it's a lot of goalposts moving, and that's what's going to happen here in Atlanta, and it's what's going to happen in Arizona when they get the ownership right. Whatever plot of land, it's got to be a permanent home, and it's got to be in the right spot out there. So Arizona is absolutely one. I felt like after I did my Arizona Coyotes tributes and everything, that they probably built a statue out there in the desert for me. I love the Coyotes fans. I loved the brand out there, and I appreciate all the kind comments.
I'm going to get a bobblehead of you in your Thrashers jersey, holding something Coyotes, and I'll put it up in my display back there for you.
Oh, we love it. We gotta give it done. I love the Coyotes faithful, and I do not believe, even if it's not the 5-year revival that Morello gets or whatever. If you really think, I tell people all the time, oh, they're never going back to, and it'll be like, people will be like, it's never going back to Atlanta. It's never going back to Arizona. I mean, I think nobody plans on dying soon. So if you're going to be alive in 2030, 2040, 2050, you think they're not going to be back in Arizona at some point? They will. And then if, that's 3 right there. I've got 2 in the West. I've got 1 in the East for me. If I had the choice to put 1 more to balance it out, and you can keep the divisions at 9 for the even split and everything. The Edmonton Oilers are in the Stanley Cup right now. The Canucks had a chance for it. The Winnipeg Jets, I know the attendance struggles. Winnipeg is a small market, but they're knocking on the door. The Maple Leafs, oh my God, they got to get it together. This is just, they're doing it on purpose at this point. But 7 is it's not the most awkward number, but why not make it 8? Yep. Quebec City, go back. I get it. The Canadian dollar, it's not as big a market. So if they don't go back, I also understand. But if you're going to go to Atlanta and Houston, and the NHL is the only league in the Big 5 that does not have a team in Houston and Atlanta, all the other ones do. You knock those off, it's easier to breathe. You go to Arizona, it's even easier to breathe when you thrive in those. And at this point, you're at 35 teams and saying, you can flex on even the NFL. We were able to go past 32, and we haven't failed at all.
Yeah.
If you want to do one more, go back to the birthplace of the game. And people in Quebec City will be like, oh, do you guys not like? I have nothing against Quebec City. What I don't like are jokes that the Atlanta Thrashers will get a team back for the 3rd Atlanta team and will relocate to Quebec City. I'm gonna let y'all in on a little bit of news, and this isn't necessarily a news leak. Shout out to NHL to Atlanta. To all the people trying to make that joke, Vernon Krause and Anton Carter's ownership groups have proposed 20 to 30 year clauses where an expansion team back to Atlanta cannot relocate. So good luck with that. Yeah. So that joke is funny, but you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and get some new material. But for me, go back to Quebec City. Go back to the birthplace of the game.
Sorry, by the way, as soon as that comes out, brother, I hate to cut you off, but it's always the 6 fans, right?
Yep.
Our 6 fans will be in attendance.
Well, apparently we're 3 of them because yeah. Oh, dude,
I've already got half. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers social media team loves to poke fun at that, and they deserve to. You told us it would not work down here. We deserve to be relocated. It doesn't belong down there. And all the people in Florida asked for. They did not say we don't like hockey. We don't like this sport. We don't want to support it. We don't want to be dead last for a decade. They show up. You can call it fair weather, whatever you want to. They are showing up for their team. And when the Panthers win this cup, finish the job, Florida. But when the Panthers win this cup, I want everybody to watch the boom in hockey in South Florida. And the NHL will look back and say, we stayed and we got it right. So, and if I had any other cities, Quebec City, Atlanta, Houston, Arizona, just some rapid fire ones. Kansas City will work. Milwaukee, I would have thought they would have did Milwaukee by now. Portland, if I got one more, if I got an honorable mention. Oh, man. New Orleans? Yikes.
That would be an interesting one.
It'd be an interesting one. I'm surprised they've put that in the hat recently. I'm like, they're not going to do that. But there's a couple that can absolutely do it. I think there's 4 that are head and shoulders above everyone. If you guys asked me this, oh, my goodness. If you guys asked me this 3 months ago, I'd be like, yeah, Salt Lake City. I guess, well, they won't have to get an expansion team as of right now, so.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you when you said, they have to take this slow, right? They can't go and do 4 teams at once. It would water down so much. But I mean, you look at when Atlanta came into the league, the expansion draft was a bunch of fourth liners that you got, and it's not the same NHL. Fourth liners nowadays can play just as good as the first liners, really. I mean, the difference between that is so small nowadays that it's actually kind of scary for these teams that are coming in. And the thing of, expansion teams aren't going to have success. The Knights gave you the model. Follow it. I mean, they really
Kraken did okay.
The Kraken are fine.
The Kraken are perfectly fine. They've had injury problems and they've had the wrong coach. I mean, that's plain and simple what's happened with them. But and they're having success. They're selling out every night in a non-traditional hockey market, right? And we're in this phase of the NHL where they're wanting to bring things back to cities, right? Why not go back to Atlanta? Like, I don't understand that. If they're not going to, that should be the next number one A1 priority to get a team back there. Sorry, Steve. But and then the number 2 priority should be get them back in Arizona, because I think you do it one year and the next, and you do them just like that. You find ownership groups for both teams that are going to be good ownership groups. Like you said, a 20 to 30 year clause would be freaking fantastic for Atlanta. It would give security to the fans to know that, hey, if we suck for the first year or two, they're not just going to say, oh, well, you're out of here. And that will work. I fully believe that Atlanta hockey will work, just purely because of what are you guys doing with the ACHA and AAU hockey out there right now with Georgia and all those other places just having success. And people ask me all the time, why do they want to go back to Atlanta? Look at what they're doing with ACHA hockey. Like, it's not even NCAA D1 hockey, and they're getting fans in the building.
They're going crazy for it.
They're going crazy for it. Yeah. And those teams will be NCAA D1 hockey schools within a matter of years. It'll be that Arizona. They will be. They will be with the growth they've had over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's been insane to watch. And to be a part of that league, it's been insane to watch it just kind of progress that way. But those are my 2 cities that absolutely have to get moved back to. The way that Arizona got moved out of there, me and Steve have talked about this multiple times. It was really bad. It was poorly planned. Now you have Utah across the front of a hockey jersey in the NHL, which is going to be very weird. They're not even going to have a name until probably the first week of the season. We're calling them the Utah Coyotes until they get their name. And if they decide to call themselves the Utah HC, we're going to call them the Utah Coyotes from that point on. So please don't name it. Please don't name it the Utah Hockey Club. This isn't soccer.
Yes.
But going east, I think that Milwaukee would be great. That's kind of in the middle, though. I think that Kansas City, like Steve said, you have to get some big names in there in that ownership group. And I know that Mahomes just bought a women's soccer team there. And he built them the very first women's only soccer stadium with their own locker room and all that kind of stuff with his wife, Brittany. So, I mean, they are in the market of buying teams, right? You look at, and going back west, some places that haven't been named on this is San Diego. They already have an AHL team. And I know there's been a push in recent months to really try and get an NHL team down there. I know there's been talk of the Ducks moving there. That's never going to happen, guys.
Not happening.
Not happening. The Ducks won't move. The Kings won't move. The Sharks aren't moving. If those teams move, there's a problem with California hockey. Those are your staples, but you got to keep going down the coast. I think you have to put one in San Diego in the next, you want to go to 36 with the other, with Houston, go there, but you gotta get into San Diego because it's just an untapped market. Their AHL team has a lot of success. They have a junior hockey team. They have an AHL team. I mean, they have the stepping stones to do it. They just don't have.
And San Diego is an awesome city.
Oh, it's
my dad's favorite freaking Atlanta, and that's why he hasn't moved. But when my dad is not in Atlanta, Georgia, San Diego is his favorite freaking city on the continent. So he would be all for that. I'm probably gonna get dragged to some games out there if that were to happen.
Oh, yeah, that'd be terrible, right?
Yeah, right. It'd be terrible to go hang out by the beach.
Oh my god, the amazing weather. Oh my god, I can't stand it.
It sucks. From a guy who's lived there, it sucks. But no, yeah, bring a team to San Diego. I think that would be terrific for that market. Maybe even move the AHL team out of there. I don't know. I don't know how that would work or how they'd want to work that, but no, definitely San Diego. Another, honorable mention is, I was going to say Sacramento, but really it's already kind of tapped in there with San Jose, kind of the same area. It's just a big city, right? Like you could probably put one there, but it probably wouldn't have as much success as you'd think it would. But Arizona has to be the number one in the West, and on the East, it has to be Atlanta. There's no other way around that. And and I'm going to get flack for not saying the Nordiques right away, but the Nordiques, I think in my mind, are kind of an afterthought. I think that they should probably be a team that gets moved there if they decide to go more than 36, just purely because it's a Canadian market. Like Steve said, the economy takes a tank there, and those teams all of a sudden are looking to possibly move. And I don't think the NHL is looking
to. They won't move them now. That was the whole idea behind revenue share, right? And that's what protected these teams. Yeah. Right. So there's other ways to protect them, but we'll get into a different podcast with that one.
Yeah, no, 100%. But like we've said, Atlanta needs a team. Let's get that happening. I would say in the next 2 years. What would you say to that?
I was so here's the thing, and I'll also use this as a segue into my next a question I actually had for you guys as well. Yeah. The thing with Atlanta is, and I have to temper expectations for my whole freaking city. I am constantly asked. I am constantly asked every day. If I go to a Gladiators game, people are going to swarm me. If I were to go to UGA hockey game, right, people are going to swarm me and ask me as if I'm a part of one of the ownership groups. To everybody who's watching this podcast, because I'm going to link this on the Blueland Erris, y'all. I'm trying. I'm one guy. Come on now. But I will say the timeline's interesting. My best friends will text me, and this is why I wanted to segue after this into the growth of the game.
Yeah,
my best friends do not follow hockey a lot. They casually follow it. They know who's in the playoffs. They know who's in the cup right now, but they're not actively watching hockey. My best friends are probably texting me right now, and they will attest to this, and they'll see this, and they'll be like, facts. They will clip this and say facts. Have told me, Erris, when and if the NHL comes back here, our families will be season ticket holders. So when people tell me, do not go someplace that's an untraditional market, I want to give you 3 examples of people who are considered family to my family. Those are my brothers, pretty much. And they have said they will immediately become diehard hockey fans just from a hockey team coming for. They didn't all live here their entire lives, but returning to this market. And that is how new fans are created. There are people 100%. In Arizona that will feel the same way. It is hard to support a league when you can't drive down the street and go watch the game yourself. Yes. I say this all the time. So people are like, no one. Vegas again. Oh, well, no one watches hockey there. Well, damn, where are they going to get the opportunity to do it? It's not. Well, it's awful.
Yeah, and to go to that point, a lot of people didn't realize, but the Kings had been coming here for preseason games that would sell out, for years. And it was the running joke when everyone would say that is, oh, I guess you never watched Kings preseason then, because they'd come here, they'd play 2 teams here, and it would usually be, they would have their crest, and this is a running joke within Kings fans and Knights fans. The Kings logo was the first logo to be put at the center ice of the T-Mobile Center. It was not the Knights, it was the Kings. So, but that's just what's kind of been growing, right? Like, I mean, the Kings came here, fans came, fans traveled, fans that were here watched those games, and they were sellouts for preseason, and that was when the NHL said, okay, we need to put a team here. And yeah, no, that's 100%. You make those diehard fans by bringing a team to that city. 100%.
Yeah, for sure. And so for timeline, for Atlanta, it is hard to gauge. I tell my friends all the time, when's it coming? But you've got so what's interesting with Atlanta is we've had an expansion team relatively recently, and it was Atlanta United. There's so many kids in Atlanta that play soccer. And growing up, I was always like, why do we not have an MLS team? They came, it was announced. Arthur Blank tried my whole childhood to get a team and finally got one. It was announced my 8th grade year. They did not start playing until my junior year of high school. And United's such a young franchise. So we've really relatively been through expansion. But I tell people in Atlanta, I'm like, do y'all forget what it was like getting an expansion team? Many of y'all have lived through this before. So I say the same thing with the NHL. This is not something the league can rush. And you don't want them to rush it, especially for us. So especially for us. So, they're really going to have to take their time with this, and they should. So it's hard for me to gauge if we'll be awarded one in 2 years. If I had to tell you they'll be playing before the end of the decade, I do like 2027, 2028, 28, 29 for the inaugural season. But it just goes back to what I'm saying, the growth of the game. A lot of people, when you bring up the expansion topic, will also say, 34 teams will dilute the talent, or 36 teams will dilute the talent. And my rebuttal to that is this, and I can get into market sizes and all that, but for this conversation, that's not so much relevant. That's not as relevant. People forget the grassroots effects that come with sports. And I don't know why, but people, and it's human nature to have a little bit of short-term vision. So I give people grace. If the Arizona Coyotes were not in Arizona, Austin Matthews, I'm telling y'all, he would have picked a different sport to play.
100%.
That is a whole timeline erased because an NHL team was not in that market. So I want people to understand. I do think they're not going to 40 teams right now. I'm sure when I'm an old man, the same way my dad tells me all the time, Erris, if you think going to 36 is crazy, I didn't grow up with a 30-team NBA the whole time. I didn't grow up with a 32-team NFL. That was crazy to me and my friends when we were little boys. Now it's normal. It will probably be normal when I'm an old man telling my son, I didn't grow up with a 40-team NHL, so I understand one day. But 36 teams is not pushing it to me for the reason that there is a grassroots effect. If you think that it will push talent to the brink, first of all, I didn't think the Stanley Cup playoffs or anything dipped in talent this year's quality or anything like that. I don't know what people are talking about. People will be like, oh, I thought 32 was too much. What the hell are you talking about? I saw no dip off in terms of talent level, but I think 36 will be fine. And there's a grassroots effects. When they put a team in Houston for the first time, there's a little boy and he does not know it yet, but he's going to go to let's call him the Houston Aeros. That's probably what they're going to pick. He's going to go to Houston Aeros game for the first time. And he's going to ask his parents to play hockey, and nobody on earth knows it, but I'm telling you, he's going to go to the NHL, and it's going to be first NHL Houston-born NHL player. And NHL is going to parade that in everybody's faces, and they should. They're going to go to Atlanta. 3 Atlanta players drafted in the 2048 draft class because the Thrashers came back. Arizona, it will happen again. If they go to, they're going to come out of Quebec City anyway. Sorry, Nordics fans, they were coming out of there anyway. But I will say there's a grassroots effect. And that's why I think expansion isn't a bad idea. They're not going to do 40, but they can handle 4 in the next 8 years.
Yeah. And that's a great spot to wrap it on up here, boys, because we got more to talk about on another podcast here with Erris. So, Erris, it's been awesome having another attendee on. And we warned you, you start talking hockey with us and you could talk for hours and it will just rocket right past us.
They were not lying.
No. But we just scratched the surface too here. We could have kept going with this topic for a while. So I want to thank you to everybody for tuning in today. Please follow us on social media, including on X is the only place where it's a little bit different at PostHuggersPod. On Instagram, PostHuggersPodcast, same thing on Facebook. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube as well. Signing off today is Steve and Heath and our buddy Erris. Thank you so much for joining us, Erris. And for everybody out there, give your family a hug, give your pets a hug, but attendees, give those posts a hug. Have a great one, everybody.
Have a great one, hockey fans.